Right now in South Korea, imagine you are walking through a neon-lit city where everyone is glued to their smartphones, but they aren't looking for the nearest coffee shop or checking the weather. They are participating in a massive high-speed game of digital sabotage. It is the strangest thing you have ever seen. You have these huge online communities where the main goal is not to help people find happiness, but to make sure that if you are miserable, everyone else stays miserable too. It is like a giant bucket full of crabs, and every time one crab tries to climb out toward a better life, the others reach up and pull it right back down into the mud. Why would anyone do this? Why spend your entire day writing thousands of words to strangers, warning them that their lives are a trap? Well, it turns out that in this hyper-competitive world, happiness is not about how much you have. It is about making sure your neighbor has less than you. It is a world where being ordinary is considered a total failure. And if you can't reach the top, your only survival strategy is to burn the ladder so nobody else can get there either. But why would they actually demand this? Why would a group of people set standards for a partner that are so high they literally do not exist in the real world? We are talking about demands for a husband who makes more money than 99% of the population, looks like a movie star, and also does all the housework while never asking you to lift a finger. It sounds like a joke, right? It is like complaining that your sandwich isn't a hot bowl of soup. You are asking for something that isn't even in the same category as reality. But there is a cold, hard reason for this. If you set the bar so high that no man can ever clear it, then your choice to stay single isn't a failure anymore. It becomes a principled stand. You aren't alone because you couldn't find a partner. You are alone because the world isn't good enough for you. It is a way to save face in a society where your status is everything. They have turned their own loneliness into a luxury brand. They are aggressively fighting for their share of a financial pie that doesn't even exist, treating human relationships like a cutthroat business deal where you try to get everything for free while giving nothing back. It is pure, ruthless calculation dressed up as high standards. So you have to ask yourself, what is the actual cultural vibe that makes this happen? Why does a whole society start acting like they are in a boardroom negotiation instead of a dating app? It all comes down to what people here call comparison culture. In this part of the world, your worth is measured by how you look compared to your high school rival on social media. If your rival gets married and moves into a fancy apartment, you don't feel happy for them. You feel like something has been stolen from you. It is a feeling of being left behind that is so painful it feels like a physical wound. To stop that pain, people have created this apartment fetish. You can't just live in a house, it has to be a specific brand of apartment in a specific expensive zip code. If you don't have that, you are told your life is basically over. So what do you do if you can't get that apartment? You go online and start telling everyone that those fancy apartments are actually cages. You start telling younger women that marriage is a form of slavery and that having a child is like being sent to a labor camp. You create a virtual hell to scare everyone else away from the things you can't have. But what happens when people actually get exactly what they asked for? What happens when you successfully scare away all the men and convince an entire generation that family life is a nightmare? You get the biggest backfire in human history. Right now, the birth rate is so low that the country is basically disappearing in real time. It is a demographic suicide mission. And the hypocrisy is the funniest part of the whole tragedy. You have these older women, often called the big sisters of the internet, who have already missed their chance at a family or are deeply unhappy in their own lives. Instead of being honest about their regrets, they use their status to gatekeep the happiness of 20-somethings. They use the language of sisterly love and protection to poison the minds of the younger generation. They tell them they are protecting them from bad men, but what they are really doing is recruiting them into a cult of collective misery. They need you to be lonely because if you find a way to be happy, it proves that their own life choices were a mistake. Your failure is their only medicine. It is a sacrificial ritual where the future of the next generation is burned at the altar of the previous generation's ego. Is this just a local thing? Not at all. It is a global disease with a very specific local flavor. You see it in the West too, with groups that teach people to vet their partners with the coldness of a surgeon, turning dating into a high-stakes audit. But in this society, it is amplified by the fact that anonymity has removed any cost for lying. You can go on a professional forum, make up a fake story about an evil husband, cause 1,000 people to delete their dating apps, and then just delete your account and go have lunch. There is no accountability for false prophecy. The system is rigged to promote outrage because anger gets more clicks than a story about a happy couple. The machine is literally designed to make you hate the opposite sex because that hatred is highly profitable. We have traded the truth for the economics of resentment. It is easier to be angry together in a chat room than it is to be content alone in a quiet house. So where does this all go? If this trajectory continues, the future is going to look like a very dark comedy. We are looking at a world of ghost families. Since people have gate-kept themselves out of real relationships, they are going to start buying into the artificial intelligence husband industry. You will have millions of people living in high-tech apartments with holographic companions because a hologram doesn't ask you to do the dishes and it doesn't have a mother-in-law. The same people who told you to stay single today will be selling you digital boyfriends tomorrow. And then there is the final farce, the lonely death. By the middle of the century, the generation that was talked into staying single will hit old age with no support system at all. Those online communities that felt so supportive when you were 30 won't be there to help you when you are 80 and your health is failing. You will be alone in a very expensive, very quiet apartment, surrounded by the archives of all the mean things you said about men on the internet. It is an outcome that feels inevitable because pride is a one-way street. Once you have told the world that everyone else is trash, you can't exactly go back and admit you are lonely without losing your status. Think about it like this. Imagine a wide, misty canyon. On the other side is a land where people share their lives. It isn't perfect, it has storms, and it requires a lot of hard work, but it is warm and fertile. Now imagine a group of travelers who reached the edge of that canyon too late, or they tripped and fell, and now they are stuck on the cold, barren side. Instead of helping the new travelers find a way across, they start screaming that the other side is a volcano full of fire. They spend their days painting the bridge to look like a trap. The younger travelers, seeing these older, confident-looking people, decide to stop. They set up camp on the freezing cliffside and congratulate each other on being so smart and having such high standards. They think they are being protected, but they are actually being used to populate a desert. The older travelers aren't saving you from a fire, they are just making sure they aren't the only ones shivering in the dark. The whole thing is built on a foundation of fake advice and relative status. People are so afraid of looking like they settled for an ordinary life that they would rather have no life at all. They have turned the idea of a partner into a commodity, a trophy that you only display if it is perfect. But since perfection doesn't exist, the trophy case stays empty and everyone just sits around judging the dust. It is a parasitic way to live. One person's sense of self-worth is entirely dependent on making sure no one else is doing better than they are. If I am drowning, I don't want a life vest, I want to pull you under the water so we can both be at the same level. That is the core of the digital sabotage we are seeing every single day. It is a race to the bottom where the winner is the person who ends up the most elegantly miserable. Why does the society create this? Because we have completely disconnected happiness from reality and attached it to how we look in the eyes of others. We live in a world where your rival's wedding photos are seen as an attack on your personal dignity. In that kind of environment, gaslighting becomes a necessary tool for survival. If you can't be happier, you have to make everyone else look sadder. You have to invent stories of hidden misery to make yourself feel better about your own empty room. You tell yourself that the married woman is a slave, that the father is a sucker, and that the happy couple is just faking it for the camera. You build a wall of lies to protect your ego, and eventually that wall becomes your prison. You are trapped in a world of your own making where the only thing left to do is keep screaming at the people on the other side of the canyon. The final irony is that the freedom everyone claimed to be fighting for has turned into a different kind of control. By trying to escape the traditional rules of the past, people have fallen under the total control of an algorithm that feeds on their bitterness. They aren't independent thinkers, they are just repeating the same scripts they read on an anonymous forum. They have traded a real life for a digital identity, and that identity requires them to be constantly angry. It is a miserable way to spend your time on Earth, but it is the only way they know how to stay relevant in a world that is passing them by. They are building a bridge to nowhere using the wood they stole from everyone else's house. In the end, the person who suffers the most is the one who actually believed the lies. They are the ones who will wake up one day and realize that the people who gave them all that advice aren't there to hold their hand. They are just ghosts in a machine, already looking for their next victim to pull into the mud. It is a cycle of resentment that only ends when there is no one left to sabotage. Fuel the truth at Dating in Korea. Support the structure. Stay safe in the lounge.